which means I'm recording right now. Hello everyone, welcome to Honey Radio. This is episode number 12 and we are live on Radio Fubar. So if you're not in the chat room, you're not getting the fun. So first things first, I'm going to thank our sponsors, Bee Nectar Meadery and Scandal Brewing. Thank you guys for helping us bring this to life. I also want to say hello to my revenge honey, Linny.
Hi.
Thank you for joining me tonight, darling.
Of course.
And I would like to say thank you to our intrepid producer, honey, Matt from Wicked Radio Network and Dead Men Talking. Thank you, Matt, for babysitting us.
You're welcome.
So our guest tonight is Mr. John Portanova, who I met at Crypticon Seattle last year through his film called, at that time it was called Cedar Ridge, and it's now called The INVOKING. And John is from a very interesting collective called the October People, which he's going to tell you about in just a little bit. But first, we're going to say hi, John. Hello.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. We're really happy that you're here.
Oh, I'm excited. I've been listening to the show ever since it started, and I really like it.
It's always weird when people tell me they listen to the show. I'm like, really? Oh. Cool. Because really it just feels like we're just talking into a can and nobody's listening. It's nice to know. So, first things first, I'm going to get you to tell us about the October People.
Okay. Well, the October People is a film production company that was started by myself, Matt Medish, and Jeremy Berg, and we made it to then make our first film, Cedar Ridge, which is now called The INVOKING, so I'll just refer to it as that from here on out. And yes, we formed this company, and because we knew, we're going to make a film where we made... it's basically a no-budget movie, very tiny. We shot it in a week. We're like, this needs to be legit. The whole point is we want to kind of get it out there. Let's make a production company. And so the October People, the name of it was just, Jeremy was inspired by Ray Bradbury. It's a line in Something Wicked This Way Comes. Mm-hmm. And so we were like, okay, yeah, the October People, that sounds cool. And now we are developing more projects within the horror genre. And so it's just an apt name for this company. What we really are striving to put out there is kind of our unique spin on well-known subgenres of horror. Coming up later this year, we're going to have an alien movie. We're going to have a Bigfoot movie. But it's going to have a strong character focus, which is something that was in The INVOKING and in kind of all of our stories that we tell. There's kind of, at least for me personally, there's no point in a story if you don't care about the characters, unless that kind of is the point. Like maybe, an asshole getting killed in the Friday the 13th. Like, that's really fun. But as far as, like, genuinely feeling like the horror really hitting you hard and it's not just like a good time beer drinking kind of movie, I think you really need to be invested in the characters. And so that's something we really strive for when we're making our horror movies.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And you have, like, people do several different things in the October People. It's not just you guys sitting around writing scripts and drinking beer.
No,
right?
Yeah, we kind of, we all switch up what we're doing. So on The INVOKING, Jeremy directed it. He was the director of photography. Him and I wrote the script, and Matt produced it, and then Jeremy and I also had some input in producing. On an upcoming film, I'm going to be directing it, and it's based on a script that I wrote. We also are representing a movie called Found that actually played at Crypticon last year as well. And we played with them at a bunch of festivals, and they reached out to us about like, hey, you guys got distribution. Can you help us maybe facilitate that for our movie? And so we are the sales reps for this movie Found, which is now going to get a big release later on this year. Hopefully the distributors announce it here soon. But yes, we're kind of got our hands in a bunch of little pies of the filmmaking process.
That's really cool. So have other people reached out to you as far as getting help with their films? Is that something, like, do you guys put yourselves out there as, hey, we're people for hire for these kinds of things? Like
it kind of depends what's going on. Honestly, the timing with Found, it really worked out because we were planning on doing my film, Valley of the Sasquatch, the one I'm going to direct later this summer. We had gotten a delay in when the production of that film could happen because we're shooting on a mountain. And it turns out there's this weird thing called snow. And so we need to wait for it to melt before we can film. Or even get up the mountain because we were wanting to film it in April. And it was this weird season of, well, there's going to be snow. So you can't really just like drive up there, but it's going to be like melty snow, so you can't even like snowmobile up there, so you basically can't get up there. And so then the opportunity came to Sales Rep Found, and we're like, okay, let's try this. Let's see what we can do. Let's talk to a company that's different than the company that put out the Invoking. And so then that kind of worked out. And then at the same time, the company who put out the Invoking was like, hey, do you guys have anything else? And we're like, I mean, we could throw something together, maybe. What are you thinking? And they're like, well, we kind of want something out by, the holidays 2014. And we're like, okay, well, we're going to be sitting around for like a few months waiting for Bigfoot to happen. And so we can really like take it easy with pre-production, just go really slow. Or we could just make another movie and then go really fast in 2 pre-productions. Let's do that. That makes sense. So we decided to make 2 movies in our downtime on 1 movie.
Because really, what else are you doing? Like
exactly. The opportunity, maybe one day the opportunity won't present itself anymore. So we might as well, like, somebody's asking, let's do it.
I think that's the best way to go about it. I mean, how else are you going to get your stuff out there?
Exactly.
I think that's cool. So since you got distribution, and it's your first film, The Invoking is your first film.
Yeah, first feature. Yeah.
First feature, which features are a big deal. I mean, they're expensive to make. They take a lot of time, obviously, but you did this in a week.
Yeah, so they can be really expensive, or they can be $11,000, and they can take a long time, or they can be 7 days. And so, yeah, but that was really our goal with the film. Like, so we went to film school. We had been making short films. We'd been doing web series, and they hadn't really gone anywhere. And so we're like, we need to make a feature, but we know no one in, like, the financial circuit or industry or whatever, like financiers. And so we're just going to have to, like, do it ourselves. And we were kind of inspired by movies like El Mariachi or Clerks, or the recent example was Paranormal Activity, which Oren Peli just shot in his home for $15,000.
Yeah.
Actually in a week as well. And so, but one thing we knew we didn't want to do is we didn't want to do Handycam, found footage movie.
Thank you.
Because that's a real easy way to hide the budget. we want to tell a traditional narrative, but we want it to be really character heavy, which is also hard when you don't have any money. You got to make sure you hire some good actors. Mm-hmm. And so we're putting all these kind of burdens on ourselves, and maybe we didn't have to, but that was just like what we were kind of striving for, to make it so the movie would hopefully stand out. And all we could afford to do was put $11,000 on credit cards, and we could take a week off work. So we made a movie.
Oh, the joys of credit.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so actually the way we were able to do that, though, and I think this is something that I tell to people who ask, like, okay, I want to make my indie movie. How do I do it? And I would say, if you have a script that you've been like sitting on, you're like, oh, this is my dream, I want to make this. That's not going to be your first movie. My dream script was Valley of the Sasquatch, and that's going to be a many hundred thousands of dollar movie. There's no way, unless I know somebody rich or if I'm a really good, pitch man, I'm not going to get that for my first thing. So, and even Jeremy, he had a script as well, and it was going to be even more expensive than the Bigfoot one. So it was like, okay, well, we're not going to make these. Let's write something within our means, and that's what's going to keep it cheap. That's what, like, Kevin Smith wrote a movie in a convenience store because that's what he had. Robert Rodriguez put a bus in El Mariachi because he knew he could get a bus. Like, that's how when you have no money, that's what you have to do. And so what we did was we had a piece of land. Matt, our producer, he grew up in Red Bluff, California. That's where Jeremy grew up as well. But so the land and the house that the movie was shot in, that's where Matt grew up. Like, that was his mom's house. And so it was like, so we have this house and we have this land. It's very picturesque, so we lucked out in that sense. And we could do whatever we want. We had the run of it for a week. And so it's like, okay, let's write a script where we never go beyond that. We're only going to write for what we have. There's a creepy barn on the property. We're going to write a creepy barn. There's some hills and a fence. We're going to write in some hills and a fence. And we're not going to do outrageous monsters. We're not going to do, I don't know, things falling from the sky, giant battles or anything. It's just what we can accomplish within that time frame for that money. We're going to make it so the script is written with all those ideas in mind.
And I think you guys did that really well, and you used your space really well as far as that went. I have to ask, and I know that most people haven't seen The Invoking, but that ceramic cat, was that there?
Okay, that ceramic cat is awesome. We wrote the script. It was back in like fall of 2011 is when we wrote the script. So we had many months of pre-production before the 7-day shoot, which that is really important as well. You can't just be like, oh, let's shoot a movie in a week starting today. Like, you can't do that. But so we had the script written, and I had never seen the house before. I'd been sent some pictures, things like that. But so Jeremy and I, who live in Seattle, we flew down to California where Matt's located, and we stayed at the house in Red Bluff for a weekend. And it was to get work done, but it was also, we were kind of hanging out. We watched like 3 movies that weekend. It was kind of, we were slacking a little bit. But as soon as we walked in, there's this big ceramic cat, which I'm kind of a short guy. Like, this cat is like half of my body. What is that? Why does this exist? And Matt's just like, I don't know. My mom liked it. And I was like, what, did she pretend it was your brother and he had to like play with you when you were a kid? Why is there a gigantic cat in your house? So it was just so weird that we put it into the script. We just had to.
I've seen those before in hallways that are in complexes full of old people, and they really freak me out.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. It's like, yeah, no, they're just the weirdest things ever. These ceramic animals that are gigantic for no reason.
One thing that was also really funny is the living room. This we had to take down, we couldn't use, but the living room was full of John Wayne memorabilia, like plates with John Wayne. And so it's like, okay, we're not going to get the rights to John Wayne's likeness, so we need to get rid of all of that. So that was a big deal. Matt's family like cleared out all of the copywritten material from their collection in the living room.
Oh my god. You really get to see who your family is when that stuff happens.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's like, I like John Wayne. I like a lot of people, but I don't have plates with people's face on them hanging in the house.
Yeah. Okay, so walk us through having your film and filming it and going through all of that post-production stuff and getting it to where it is now. Okay,
yeah, for sure. So we had our script, and we cast out of Seattle because there's a good filmmaking community here in Seattle. So we got a lot of crew members here, some of whom we'd worked with before on the shorts, and we got our cast as well, some of whom we had worked with. D'Angelo Medilli, who plays Eric, who's gotten a lot of praise for the movie. He's like kind of the landlord, the groundskeeper of this piece of land that the characters go to in the movie. I have worked with him on every single thing I've ever done. My very first movie where I was like a PA, he was the lead in it. It was this no-budget indie. And the thing that came out of it was, oh, D'Angelo's a good guy. I don't work with anyone else from that movie, but I like D'Angelo. And so we knew we wanted to bring him down, and then he introduced us to some other actors who was like, oh, if we're going to audition for these parts, like, who are some people that you think are good? Jeremy, who was directing the film, had some ideas of who he wanted to look at. And so we just reached out to about, maybe 5 or so people for each part in the local community, had them audition, and we just got together this good group of people. Jeremy spent a lot of time rehearsing with them because, when you're shooting a movie in 7 days, the biggest thing that takes time up in a movie is takes or like camera moves. So we knew that we had a limited number of shots we could do, and within those limited number of shots, we had a limited number of takes. Or if we wanted more shots, that just meant less takes. And so you needed to have actors who could just deliver it on take 1. And there were times where we'd get it, and Jeremy would be like, that's good, let's move on. We don't need another take. Let's make sure we make our day. So some of the stuff in the movie is take 1, but our maximum was 3 takes. Nothing ever went over 3 takes, except for the scene where Sam, who was played by Trin Miller, she has to put a knife in her back pocket. It's very hard to put a knife exactly in your pants back pocket and have it not like miss it first and then kind of go in. So that we did a few takes on, but luckily it didn't take that long.
I have a confession. I don't have a problem doing that. I think it's years of putting combs in back pockets, though. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's also like a big butcher knife. It's a weird thing. Like, you would never really put that in your back pocket unless you're in a horror movie. Like, but yeah, so then we carpooled down there and we just started shooting, and we did, it was like 19-hour days, and we were sleeping at the house. We would film all day. We'd eat our meals there in the house. We had a caterer with us, which that's something that's really important, especially when people are working for like deferred points or very little money, like that, because that's how you keep the budget down. Make sure you're feeding people well and that it's a fun environment. So we really wanted to make sure nobody was really stressed out. It wasn't, even though we were under the gun, it was still a fun set. There was joking around. It was a lot of friends. And so that was really important. And also just making sure people were well fed. So we had a caterer there. And so we would, sleep in the living room. Typical day. You wake up in the morning, and after about 5 hours of sleep or less, and it's like, okay, let's eat some breakfast. Everyone gets all organized and dressed, and let's just start going. About an hour after you wake up, we're shooting the first scene. And then it just continues on for the rest of the day. And there were some heavy days shot-wise where I think at most we'd do 40 setups in a day, which that's like different placements of the camera is a setup. And so I'll tell that to some people and they'll be like, 40 setups, like 20 is an exorbitant number of setups.
Yeah, no kidding. Like that's a holy shit kind of day.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was it, but that's just what we had to do to make sure that we got the movie done. Because like you were saying, features is this whole other thing. And we had done shorts, and one of our shorts played at a couple festivals, but then nothing came of it. And then we had a web series. It was about 6 years or 5 years before everyone and their mom had a web series, and so no one was watching it. But we did that for about a year, and it just they weren't going anywhere. So we're like, okay, features is where it's at. Distributors make money on features. We need to try to sell this movie, and so then we can do other stuff. And so that was the whole thing of just like, we just got to get this done. That was, and not to say that we wanted to settle for subpar quality, but it was important to make sure, like, we need to complete this. We can't go down there and then fail, because then we can't afford to go back. We can't bring all these actors, like, caravan them down, pay for them to take time off of work, things like that.
Yeah, definitely.
And so once we were done, the editing process continued, because I guess that's something as well that we had to take into account, because we were shooting all at one location that we didn't have access to. Like, it would be a plane ride or a day's drive to get back to that location. What we did is we had our editor on set with us. And so Autumn, our editor, kind of had one of the rooms in the movie that you see a couple doors near the front door that never get opened. That's because Autumn is back there editing. And so she was cutting the movie, and we had like a rough cut of the movie by the time we were done shooting that week.
That's crazy.
And it was just so we could know if we were missing something. And sometimes it would be like, oh, we have to get this shot. We were going and we skipped over it. Let's go back and get it. And since it's all takes place right there, it's not a big deal. Where on any other kind of production, it would be. Or if a scene wasn't really working, she'd be like, I don't know if this scene's cutting together. Maybe we should reshoot it. And then we'd be like, okay, well, why don't you work on it? Like, focus on that for like a half a day. And then still, let us know if we still need to mess with it. And then she would, discover like, okay, no, we're good. It can work. And so having her there on set was invaluable. And then, just the editing process continued for many months, and we got the movie finished late 2012. We shot it in January 2012, which is important for all the people that think we're ripping off The Conjuring. We filmed it a year and a half before we even knew what that movie was. But then we got into some film festivals, which that's like always a big part when you're doing an indie film, is you got to make sure you set money aside for film festivals, because it can be expensive, like thousands of dollars submitting to film festivals you don't get into, because that's how film festivals make their money, is by saying, give us $50 and we'll consider playing your movie.
Yeah, see, that's what I don't understand, is I've never, obviously I've never made a film, so I don't know how the film festival thing works. I know it's an application process, but I didn't realize that you had to pay to get into them.
Yeah, no, for sure. Just because it sort of makes sense, because some of them, it is like this big business. They have a lot of employees who have to watch the movies, things like that. But it can be very expensive for the indie filmmaker. And so what we did is we really kind of strategized where we wanted to show stuff. And like, I'm always just like poring over movie news, and usually it's horror movie related. So I'll see like, okay, at this festival, like this is a festival where Paranormal Activity sold. This is the festival where Cabin Fever sold. Like, let's attack festivals where movies get picked up for distribution. Oh, sorry. I keep hearing like little boops, like people are talking in the chat.
Oh no,
like,
it's
offline.
We're having this like little mini Skype conversation, so I'm really sorry to cut you off. Apparently our sound is being weird for some people, but I'm getting it just fine, so
okay. Yeah, I can hear you guys fine.
Yeah, don't even worry about it. I can hear Lenny and her jelly beans. That's
okay.
That's totally fine.
And so, yeah, what we wanted to do was focus on horror festivals, which there are a lot, but ones where movies that are maybe a little bit higher profile, movies or festivals where those movies sell. Because, there are a lot of festivals where it's just the same thing as no-budget indie movies like us. There's no-budget festivals where they're just like, we just want to collect these indie movies and show them, but and that's awesome. I mean, there's nothing wrong with if your movie gets in there. That's great. Like, somebody saw your movie and chose it to be in their festival, even if it is a tiny festival. But the only problem is with our goal, because we had put all this money on credit cards, which, I mean, $11,000 isn't a lot. It's like nothing movie-wise. But for, like, me, a dude working like a 9-to-5 job, like, that's a lot. Like, to have this sitting on credit card. And so we needed the movie to sell. And so we didn't submit to those kind of festivals. And then we were also focusing on like actual independent festivals. Because one thing that's really weird in the world we live in now is there's like independent movies starring Pierce Brosnan. Like, that's not independent. Like, Fox Searchlight. Like, if you have Fox in your title, you're not independent.
No.
Like, you have a studio behind your movie. And so we were avoiding, we knew we wouldn't get into things like a Sundance or a South by Southwest, like the bigger kind of festivals like that. So we were focusing on ones where it was like, we play movies where you haven't heard of anyone in the cast and it's a first-time director. We'll show that kind of movie. And maybe there's some higher profile ones, but just the fact that they were open to that, or that we saw in their past catalogs that those are the kind of movies they had played, those were where we spent the money submitting to. And so we had our premiere at the Sun Valley Film Festival, which was in Idaho, and that was a really great experience. It was just cool to see the movie in a theater with great surround sound. And then throughout 2013, we played at many festivals. Some of them were conventions like Crypticon, or like we were at the Fright Night Film Fest. And then there were film festivals, both horror and just regular film festivals. Like here in our local area, we played at like in Tacoma and Seattle film festivals. And it was really cool. You know, you meet a lot of great people at film festivals, people there with their own films, future collaborators, actors, directors of photography, editors. You meet all these great people. And then also, hopefully, you meet some distribution people. We actually didn't while we were in the film festival circuit, but it actually happened kind of simultaneously off to the side. We had gotten in contact with this company called Ruthless Pictures because we heard that they were interested in acquiring low-budget horror movies, and we looked at their catalog, and it didn't matter about like names and things like that. They just they were putting out horror movies. So we started talking with them, and they were like, yeah, you know, we're not distributors ourselves, but we can represent your movie. We'll be like the sales agents, and we have connections with a lot of studios. And so we can see about getting your movie out there. And so in working with Ruthless while the movie was going around on the festival circuit, it started like receiving some accolades. We got some really good reviews. We won some awards. And then Ruthless was like, yeah, I think, you know, your movie's solid. Like, we can sell it. But the only problem is what distributors care about is having like a product that when it's sitting on the shelf and somebody sees it and they have no idea what it is, they need to just look at it and want it, just from like the cover, from the name, from the tagline, whatever. Something needs to make them grab it. And so Ruthless came up with the idea of retitling the movie. And we were fine with it. We didn't pick the title, The Invoking. That was something the distributor ended up coming up with. But we told Ruthless, yes, if a distributor wants to retitle the movie, we're fine with that, because it's not about us. We made a movie called Cedar Ridge. That's what we thought represented the movie. People who have now seen it, now that it's released as The Invoking, will say, oh, it used to be called Cedar Ridge? Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. But we had people that were working for deferred payment. They gave, you know, a week and then however many weeks in prep and in the wrap-up, they gave time from their lives where they didn't make any money, and they took it off of a work job that was paying them to do our movie. We had like an obligation to make sure they get their money back. We did have a couple of smaller investors that helped pay into that like kind of 11 grand. So we wanted to get them their money back. And also obviously pay off credit cards. We didn't want to have credit card debt forever.
Yeah, no.
And so we were like, oh yeah, you can retitle the movie. That's fine. And so that's when the movie became The Invoking. That was maybe halfway through our film festival process. We played at a few festivals in the fall of last year under the title The Invoking. And then the artwork changed. That was the distributor we ended up getting hooked up with was Image Entertainment, which I was really excited about. They're not like a major studio. As far as I know, they don't really produce their own product, but they put out a lot. And one thing that I always remembered is one of the first DVDs I ever bought was their release of Assault on Precinct 13, the John Carpenter version. And so they have this catalog where like they now have the rights to like the first two Hellraisers, and they have like Children of the Corn and Reanimator. It's like our movie is going to get put out by the company that also like it's going to be on the same website as Reanimator. Like, fuck yeah. So they mocked up the art, which is now being sold with the movie. Which, I mean, when we were traveling in the festivals, we had some art, which you can find it online. If you look us up on IMDb, you'll see the old Cedar Ridge poster. And it was just, somebody we knew who could draw, and they drew a nice little poster. But it wasn't, we weren't like, oh, this is the end-all be-all, just like we didn't think the title Cedar Ridge was the end-all be-all. So Image came up with their own art, and they heavily sold the supernatural angle. And obviously, the fact that it was in the summer of 2013 when they decided to call the movie The Invoking, and they came up with this supernatural artwork, obviously it was a reaction to The Conjuring, even though our movie was made a year and a half early. But yeah, so that's why now we have that title. That's why we have the poster with a big mansion with a ghost in the window. There's not a ghost in the movie, and there's not a mansion. It's just a normal house. But they needed to sell to something. This was another thing, I guess, going back to the genesis of the project. We knew, okay, other people have made low-budget stuff before. We're not the first people. Other people have made low-budget stuff in their parents' backyard before. We're not the first people. The only thing is, usually, those no-budget movies will rely on two tropes, and that's blood and boobs.
Yeah.
And they will just shovel that in your face and be like, look, we made a movie. Look at all this blood and all this boobs. But that's kind of all it is. And they can be entertaining. I've been entertained by some of them. We didn't want to make that movie. We didn't want to blend in with all those other ones, and we wanted to try something a little harder. The same reason we weren't doing found footage. We didn't want to do a no-budget slasher movie or a no-budget zombie movie. And so we wanted to tell this more psychological story. And so what that makes it for the distributor when they're marketing it is, okay, how do I market this movie where you don't know really what kind of movie it is until it's halfway over? And so we play with the idea that, okay, the characters get there and they start to see weird things. Is it ghosts? Maybe. Are they going crazy? Maybe. People are dying. Is there like a mad slasher running around? Maybe. But you can't advertise maybe. So it does make sense that that's like the DVD cover they put out. But, now that the movie's out there, we are running into the backlash of that, where people buy a ghost movie and they get a psychological kind of thriller.
Oh, we'll talk about that in just a minute. I want to get into that
exactly. But I guess that's kind of the journey that we went through, and it's always going to be different for everybody. There are people that, when your movie plays, if it's at maybe a bigger festival than what we got into, there will be like bidding wars will start because there will be more money people there at that festival, or other things. Or there's a lot of filmmakers that distribute themselves. Or you go to a film market where it's all about just trying to sell the movie. They don't really screen them as like, oh, you can win awards and stuff. They're screening it for potential buyers. And so that was just the story of what happened with our movie, how eventually now it's out there, it's on video on demand, it's all over the internet, it's sitting on shelves in Walmart. Like, we made this movie for nothing in 7 days. And, like, some random person in middle America, like, it's sitting on a shelf next to, like, Robert Redford movies. Like, that's fucking awesome. Like, we couldn't dream that it would go that far. So we're really happy with the path that's happened. And it's not going to be like that with every movie, or maybe it'll be like the first time fluke and it'll never be like that again. But I think for like indie filmmakers out there, it's like, it can happen. We didn't get a theatrical release, which I know a lot of people, that's like the marker of that's what they want to do. I want to get my movie in theaters. We didn't get that. But as far as like a video on demand, straight to video kind of release, we got like as good as we could get. And the fact that it was on like our first movie that we meant to be like this experiment to show what we could do, like that's awesome. And it's getting the actors work out there and the crews work out there, and they're getting other work off of it, which is great.
So what's the timeline from start to Walmart?
Start to Walmart. Okay, we started crafting the story in the summer of 2011, and it was released on home video in the U.S. on February 18th, 2014.
That's not so bad.
Yeah,
actually.
And then it's going to be coming out in the U.K. in May, like May 12th. It's going to come out in the U.K. with a cover that more accurately reflects the movie, which is kind of interesting. So I really like the U.K. cover.
Oh, you're going to have to send it to me. I want to see.
Yeah, it's actually, we changed the Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Cedar Ridge. Now that's the picture of the Facebook page is a UK cover because we like it so much.
Well, I'm going to have to go look at that right now. So tell me, what advice do you have for indie filmmakers? I mean, you've kind of covered that, in your last answer, but I'm really interested in the whole film festival and how to get into them and stuff. So how much budget do you set aside for these festivals?
I mean, it depends on the size of your movie and how much you have to spend. This movie was tiny, and so we probably spent a couple thousand for something like our Bigfoot movie that we're planning on doing, where we don't have distribution already figured out ahead of time, because some movies, they get some of their budget by pre-selling distribution. For that one, we have maybe 10 grand set aside, because we know what's going to get us out there and get us seen and get us bought is being in bigger film festivals. Mm-hmm. We need to have the money to submit to them, because the prices fluctuate. You're in a smaller festival that will play no-budget horror movies, and you might win some awards, and you might be able to get some press from that. It could cost like $10 to $30. A bigger festival where movies get bought can be $50 to $100.
Gotcha. Okay, well, I mean, I think that's fair, and I don't think a lot of people really think about that when they're making a film. I know, obviously I had no idea, but I don't make movies. So the Invoking, you had a lot of success at the festivals you entered. How many festivals did you end up being in?
We were in 10, I think. We were in 9 in the US and 1 in the UK, and there's actually kind of like more coming. We might have a couple more showings in the UK like at the end of this year, like after it's already been on DVD for half a year. We might play in some more festivals. We're still figuring that out. Like, we're being invited to some festivals, which that's another cool thing that happens, especially if you start winning awards or if you get a lot of buzz about the movie, whether it's good or bad. If there's just like a lot of people talking about it, sometimes you'll get invited to other festivals. And so we're kind of running into that now that we've sort of moved on to the next projects. Invoking's kind of still going strong, which is sort of cool.
Yeah. So after your festival success, now that it's out in the public and people are seeing it, and I know you and I talked about this via email, the public reception has been a little bit harsh.
Yeah, no, it's kind of interesting because, once again, this is our first real thing that's been out there. Like, we have shorts that have pages on IMDb, but no one's rated them because no one's seen them. We have a web series that's like on Vimeo, but nobody watches it, so it doesn't have any comments and things like that. Once you get something out there in a really, really wide way, and it's just average Joes watching it, who they're plucking down $12 or $13 or whatever, they're paying $4 for the digital download. They're expecting a certain thing, and maybe they don't look into the backstory, especially, like, I think it's the whole Walmart thing. The fact that we got out in, like, the biggest retailer that there is, like, there's 35,000 Walmarts or however many there are across the country. And so we're sitting on a shelf next to a horror movie that has, it cost $40 million and it has name actors in it and it's about vampires or something. Like, it's all these recognizable properties. And then you grab this and it's like, you put it in, you're like, I don't recognize these people. This doesn't look like a regular movie. Because, I mean, when you're in a film festival, you get used to kind of like the indie look, which I think our movie looks really good. It actually won some cinematography awards, but you're not going to watch, I don't know, what's an example? A movie that Anchor Bay is putting out that it theatrically, maybe not the straight-to-video stuff, but something Anchor Bay put out theatrically or something Lionsgate put out theatrically, you're not going to confuse that with our movie. Like, they look different. And then also the fact that the movie is very ambiguous. Like, that was something where when we were talking about, like, oh, we don't want to be a slasher, we don't want to be a no-budget zombie movie, let's make it so that it's about the characters and we really try to tell an interesting story, and we can't show a bunch of stuff. We can't have big, giant action scenes, so let's keep it ambiguous and let the audience kind of decipher part of the movie. And that just seemed to piss some people off, which obviously I can understand that. There have been movies where I've been like, what was that about? But then you watch it again and maybe you get it a little bit more, things like that. And also, people can pick it up and it's a ghost on the front, and then they watch it and it's not a ghost. It's some kids talking, and then they start seeing some things that maybe aren't there, and you're not really quite sure what's going on. So it's a lot of different factors. Another thing could have been the quotes we were getting, because when we were in festivals, we were making sure to be sending out the screener to a bunch of people. We sent it to you. We found ins at like Rue Morgue and Fangoria. And so we were just shooting this screener out everywhere. Not everybody wrote it up, or it would take like months and months and months, and finally be like, oh, we have a review on Fangoria.com. It's like, holy shit, that's amazing. We sent it to them like 5 months ago. And luckily, in that circumstance, it seemed like most people liked it. Like, did anyone say it's like the greatest movie ever made? Absolutely not. But there was positive reviews where we'd get 2.5 out of 4 stars, 3 out of 4 stars. And then there would be little quotes, which those quotes are now on the DVD. And so I think people are thinking like, oh, Fangoria is saying it's, it's chilling. Rue Morgue is saying it's creepy as hell. And it's got a ghost on the front. Like, I'm going to rent this. I know exactly what I'm getting. And then they watch it and they're like, what is going on?
So I know that's done to sell DVDs, obviously, but do you feel like the distributors did your film a disservice? In this way? Because, I was going to read out some of these reviews, but I feel like that's just mean.
Yeah, no, I've read them all, so it's okay.
I know. I don't like opening old wounds.
But, yeah, it's kind of this interesting thing. I honestly don't know, because the fact that this movie got out there is the reason why, and it's doing as well as it is, or they were projecting that it was going to do as well as it was, or it was tracking as well, whatever, that got us the next movie. Like Image and Ruthless Pictures, they're going to be working with us on The Device, the film we start shooting on Tuesday. They requested it because they liked what we did, and they liked how they thought Invoking was doing. And, I'm looking at it on Amazon. It seems to be selling okay. Like, Amazon always lists the sales rank. Mm-hmm. So for somebody who's really like, oh, I have to know what's going on all the time, like I'm just always checking that link like a madman.
I do that for stats, don't worry.
And so I don't know. It's kind of one of those things where maybe no matter what, people would have reacted like this. Like, if it was still called Cedar Ridge, would they have had that reaction? I don't know, because you could have Cedar Ridge be on that exact same poster. Mm-hmm. They still have to sell the movie somehow. So it's kind of this hard thing where I'm not sure. If the distributor's making money, then they made a smart choice. We have gotten our next 2 movies based off of this. So the fact that, there's some really negative reviews out there, we got the Bigfoot movie, Valley of the Sasquatch, set up before we had even sold The Invoking, just because somebody watched a screener and they really liked it. They were like, oh, you guys did this on nothing? We want to know what you can do with something. Here's half your Bigfoot budget. Yeah. And then, obviously the Device is set up through the same people. So it's helped us immensely. And there are people who really enjoy it. They will say, the characters really affected me. I can really relate to things about this movie. I liked that it was so different. I watch a lot of horror stuff. I liked that you weren't spoon-feeding the audience. I liked that it wasn't just a bloodbath because that's all you could afford. I liked you tried to tell a story. So I don't know. It's really hard because at the same time as I say all that, we are rated lower than every single Children of the Corn movie on IMDb. They all have a higher star rating. That's hard.
Ouch. Ouch. Well, I'm glad that you're taking, positive from it, because the distribution of this film is leading to your next projects. So I was going to ask how it affects how you're going forward with your new projects, but I guess it's already affected it monetarily, which is a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. We're not going to change how we do things based on the reviews. Luckily, a couple of things are going to be different with our other projects, sort of no matter what after this. The ambiguity of the story in The Invoking, we're never going to be like, here's this thing and we just spell exactly everything out for you. You're still going to have to do a little bit of thinking, but the kind of mind fuckery of The Invoking, that's not like our style. Our next couple of projects aren't going to be like that. There's going to be an alien on the cover of The Device. It's an alien abduction movie. There's going to be an alien in the movie. So at that base level, in Valley of the Sasquatch, there's going to be a Bigfoot on the cover. You're going to see a Bigfoot in the movie. So it's not going to be those same kind of problems that people might have with The Invoking. But it will still be very much character-driven stories. We kind of have this thing where we want to make sure that if you took the monsters or the mindfuckery of The Invoking, if you took that out of the movie, it would still be an interesting drama. And so we're going to spend a little more time with characters than maybe you're used to in horror movies. They're going to have a little more shades to them than maybe you're used to. And that's just our style. So certain things we're aware, like, okay, luckily we're now making movies where people aren't going to have to be like upset about false advertising or whatever the distributor might advertise. Because we know what they're going to advertise. It's a monster movie. They're going to put the monster on the front. But we're not going to, we're not really losing sleep over it. It's just kind of a bummer.
It's good. It's always hard to see people talking shit about something that you've made. So
yeah, it's funny though, because at the same time, if you look like, I don't know, look up ET. There's going to be like on the IMDb message boards, there's going to be a thread that says ET sucks, and there's going to be 100 people saying like, yeah, fuck the ET.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I think that's true with everything.
Exactly. And
there's always going to be someone that doesn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's always someone that doesn't like cake. And fuck them. So we kind of touched on it a little bit, but tell us about your new project. So you have an alien abduction movie and a Sasquatch movie.
Yes, which are two things that I've been in love with since I was a little kid. Like, grew up watching Unsolved Mysteries or like Sightings, like these paranormal investigation shows. And so like if I could go back in time and tell like the 10-year-old me, like in 1 year, within like months of each other, you're going to film a movie about aliens and a movie about Bigfoot, like I would like make a time-space paradox because my head would explode. The 10-year-old me's head would explode. So then I wouldn't exist. I wouldn't be able to go back in time. All that stuff. It would just be a big But so it's really exciting. So what the device is, like I was mentioning before, is we're working with Ruthless Pictures in a more it's an October People and Ruthless Picture production this time, as opposed to them just being the sales reps like they were with the Invoking.
Mm-hmm.
They came to us. They wanted a project that we could make for a lower budget, and we said, well, can we have some creative control? And they said, you can have total creative control. The distributors just need to have a monster on it. You could make a drama where a monster shows up in the last 30 seconds. That's fine. They just need to be able to put a monster on it. We're like, well, we're not going to do that because we're also like, we like horror movies. We want to make a good alien horror movie, so we're not going to throw a fast one and stuff. So we started putting it together, and we really loved that we had that freedom. We could tell any story we wanted. We knew, like in our, we have notebooks of like stuff we wanted to do. I had ideas for an alien story that I've been like collating for years. And then Jeremy had the idea specifically for the device, which is about this kind of, it's like this fractured family that they reunite when mother has passed away. These two sisters who haven't seen each other in like over a decade reunite, and they go up to like the family cabin to dump the mother's ashes in the lake. It's like an area that she really loved. And when they're there, they find this alien device that opens up this kind of other world. Suddenly they go back home and they start having nightmares about strange alien creatures. They start experiencing supernatural phenomena, and it's like sets up in this device sets up in this chain of events that could like kind of destroy their family, pull their family apart. And so we were really interested in telling that story. We were really interested in telling a scary alien movie, because I know there's one article on the Horror Honey site that I really liked that was about aliens and horror or something like that. It was talking about Fire in the Sky or like Communion and things like that. And I really like those movies. It's a subgenre that's pretty underrepresented, but there's some scary shit in there. I mean, the abduction sequence in Fire in the Sky, like that is the perfect horror movie. It's only 15 minutes of a 2-hour movie, but it's a perfect 15 minutes.
Yeah, and it shows up in so many montage, and you always know that that's Fire in the Sky, and you're like, oh fuck, Fire in the Sky, oh my god, I remember that. Yeah,
exactly. And so we're just excited to be telling a story that'll exist in that same subgenre. Like, it'll sit on a shelf, like if there's some alien fan who buys every alien movie. I mean, I guess I'm just talking about me at this point. It'll be on my shelf next to Communion, And so, yeah, we're filming that in 2 days is when we start production. We're filming it all around Washington with a lot of local talent, a lot of whom we haven't worked before, but some returning crew members from the Invoking. And we're planning on having it out, like I mentioned before, by the end of this year. It should be out on home video in a similar release to what the Invoking had. They're going to pitch it to Redbox. They're going to pitch it to Walmart. It's going to be all over online. So it's kind of awesome knowing that, like, somebody's giving us some money for a movie. It's still very low budget. It still would be considered a micro budget movie. Mm-hmm. But we know it's going to get out there. We don't have to like be like, oh man, what about that year where we're having to pay for travel to film festivals and we're like trying to hustle the movie. Like, we don't have to worry about it. We know it's going to be coming out. So that's cool. But it is a very accelerated process. It's going to have been exactly 12 months. Like, let's say the movie comes out the end of November. It'll have been 12 months since we started figuring out really the concept it'll have been a 12-month process through scripting and shooting and editing. Like, that's really fast.
That seems like such a crazy timeline. So how long do you have to film? Like, how long are you going to be actually filming for this one?
2 weeks. So it's
Oh,
double
luxury.
the time to be invoking.
Luxury.
Yeah, we're moving on up.
That's awesome. Well, I have to suggest that if you're going to be, when you do start your Valley of the Sasquatch filming, you should come up to Vancouver and film up here, because we actually have Sasquatches up here. So
Oh, yeah, I know.
you might get lucky.
I'm very happy to live around, like, Bigfoot country, because it's like, BC and Washington, like, that's it. That's, like, the gold mine of Bigfoot sightings. But we actually already have a location, unfortunately. I would love to shoot up in BC. I actually went to film school at the Vancouver Film School up there, so I really like it.
Did you really? That's
Yeah.
so funny. Like, everyone's gone to VFS.
Yeah, no, I mean, I learned a lot. It's a really good program. It's really expensive.
Yes, it is.
Unless I hit it big sometime soon, I'm going to be paying it off for the rest of my life. But I learned a lot.
Those bastards.
But yeah, so Valley of the Sasquatch, we're also going to be shooting around Washington. It's going to be in the mountains. And that's a project I'm really excited about, because when I graduated from VFS, I was like, okay, I'm not going to go and start working right away. Like, obviously I had loans that had piled up and things. I needed to start working. But I was like, I'm going to take a month and I'm going to write a script. And I'm going to try to see if that can get me some work, whether it's writing, whether it's getting on set, whether it's that dream thing of somebody, coming down from the heavens and being like, I'll fund your movie, person who just graduated, get over and make it. No, that didn't happen. At this point now, it's been 8 years since I wrote it. But I took a month and just wrote the script. And I was like, this is what I want to do. This is like my dream project. I want to write potentially the ultimate Bigfoot horror movie that, like, treats the monster seriously, that isn't just a slasher movie where instead of writing Jason, I typed Bigfoot. Which there are ones like that, and they are kind of fun. There's a really fucked up movie from the 80s called Night of the Demon that's a Bigfoot slasher movie. But that just wasn't exactly the kind of story I wanted to tell. And I wanted it to be that kind of more dramatic story. And so I took this month off after I graduated school and just wrote the script. I've been rewriting it and honing it ever since. And we've got some investors that are really interested in a quality Bigfoot movie. They're like, yeah, why aren't there more good Bigfoot movies? It's the same thing with, like, the alien abduction subgenre. It's a smaller subgenre. I guess there are a lot more Bigfoot movies than alien abduction, but still, you tell most people, like, yeah, there's, like, books written about Bigfoot movies, and they're like, what? There's more than Harry and the Hendersons? Like, they just didn't realize.
There's a poster. There's a poster I saw, and I'm sure you saw it too, and it's like a cyborg Sasquatch.
Oh, yeah, Megafoot.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, they started following me on Twitter, and I got really excited. I mean, I felt like I made it when Megafoot followed me on Twitter.
Really? Because I was like, what the fuck?
It's just like sometimes those things, it's like the silly premise. Like, well, obviously, I probably wouldn't make a movie called Megafoot, but it can exist. Like, that's fine. It's like Project Metal Beast. Like, maybe, for me, a werewolf, it can just be a werewolf, and that's good enough. But for some people, you need to graft metal onto the werewolf and make Project Metal Beast, and that's their werewolf movie.
Shit.
But so now we're going to be starting production on it mid-June. So we're going to wrap the device, and then 2 months later, we're going to be filming Valley of the Sasquatch, which in the future, we probably won't have productions that close together. But it's just how the dice were rolling this year for us, I guess. And so it's like, well, I guess we could either be doing this and be working our asses off and not sleeping, or we could, work in a cubicle for the rest of our lives. Like, let's do this.
Oh my god. Okay, so I had one more question I was going to ask you, and I completely forget what it was. Shit, my last question completely...
In the chat room, if that
Oh,
helps.
Do we?
Yeah, somebody was wondering what I think of the show Finding Bigfoot.
Oh,
I was actually typing my response, but I guess the whole reason for the chat room is because we're talking live.
Exactly.
This is my first live podcast. Somebody's wondering, what do I think of the show Finding Bigfoot? I've actually never seen it. I'm not anti-Finding Bigfoot. I just don't have TV. I have a collection of very, very many DVDs. That's where all of my spending money goes. And we also have a video store here in Seattle called Scarecrow Video that has the world's largest movie collection. They have like 120,000 movies. And so I just rent stuff. And I mean, I think Finding Bigfoot's out on DVD, but I just haven't gotten around to it. One day I'll watch it. Like I was saying before, he said, spoiler, they never find Bigfoot. Well, that's the hard thing about actually, honestly, you know, believing in Bigfoot. Like, I mean, when I was growing up, I wanted to be like, how do I be a cryptozoologist? How do I be a Bigfoot researcher? Like, that'd be amazing. But it is that hard thing of like, how do you believe in something that for half a century people have been reporting on and it still hasn't been discovered? But I would watch the show. Like I was saying before, stuff like Unsolved Mysteries, they're reenactments, or even modern shows on Animal Planet or something, where I'll catch an episode here or there when I'm at somebody's house who has cable, and they're like, okay, we're out in the woods and it's really dark and we're hearing stuff. But you sort of get into it a little bit. And so one day I'll watch it. I'll watch anything Bigfoot.
Well, you can call it research now. This is a tax write-off.
Yeah, no, totally. But yeah, so one thing, I mean, I guess to talk a little bit more about what's going on with Valley of the Sasquatch, plot-wise, since I got into the device a little bit, is, so I wanted to tell a story where it's taking into account some real Bigfoot sightings and why, you know, okay, I want to tell a horror movie. That's a genre I like. I want Bigfoot to be the monster, but that doesn't mean that it's a villain necessarily. I'm treating it like it's a wild animal. And so what it is in the movie, you get a sense of why the Bigfoot would be attacking in this one specific area. And, you know, it's not like, oh, there's a legend around these parts that if you go in there, Bigfoot's going to kill you. You know, people disappear, like hundreds of people. They find bodies all the time. Like, I've seen so many Bigfoot slasher movies like that. And it's like, if people were disappearing and there were bodies, like, we would know Bigfoot exists. Because, like, cops would go into the woods, like, and hunt them down because they're murdering all these people. So I wanted to do the more, you know, realistic Bigfoot movie. And so kind of what the story is it's about this father and son who have just gone through, like, a traumatic experience. The mother of the family has died, and it kind of threw them into a tailspin. All of their savings have dried up. The dad's, you know, gone really hard, you know, hit the bottle really hard. And the son just doesn't know how to relate to him. He was always kind of more of a mama's boy. And so with all of their savings dried up, they're forced to move to Mount St. Helens into this family cabin. So suddenly they don't have water. They don't have electricity. There's an outhouse, like just totally different world. And so it's them after going through this drama, dealing with the fact that there's some Bigfoot in the area and some shit's going to go down. But I think that people that are sort of into cryptozoology or the true stories of Bigfoot, they're going to get some things out of it because there are certain elements of the story that are inspired by real Bigfoot stories. Like, for example, the reason it's set on Mount St. Helens is because there's a canyon on Mount St. Helens called Ape Canyon, and it's named after like a famous Bigfoot attack where a bunch of miners were in a cabin and they were just like pelted by rocks from Bigfoot like throughout the night. And so after they went back, you know, into town and told their story, the place was renamed Ape Canyon. And so just taking into account like history like that and trying to tell a dramatic, suspenseful, character-driven horror story
with a Bigfoot in it.
Exactly.
Cool. I think it's better to do it that way and not just like, okay, so we're going to focus on the Bigfoot, and then the Bigfoot's going to have these feelings, then he's going to be angry, and this is why, and it's this big, like, environmental story kind of hammered in at the end.
That's another thing about knowing your budget. I mean, this will be our biggest budget film yet. It's still going to be, without a doubt, a low-budget film. I think technically under like SAG rules and stuff, we are still micro budget, which I mean for us, we're like, this is amazing. Like this might as well be $1 million. It's so much compared to our other movies, but you know, SAG still calls it micro budget. And we know we're not going to have like the most amazing suit of all time. Like the best Bigfoot you're ever going to see is Harry and the Hendersons. Like it won the Oscar. Yeah. It was Rick Baker. You're never going to see better than that.
Yeah.
And so we're going to do kind of more of the Alien tact where we keep it in the shadows. We are going to reveal it, but it's not going to be like a bright sunny day and it's a full body shot of Bigfoot. So we just from a storytelling perspective, I always knew that it would be a lower budget movie. And so I was like, well, then the focus is on the people and then they encounter the Bigfoot. It's not going to be like a day in the life of Bigfoot.
That's too bad. But, you know, at least you're going to get, you know, a glimpse.
Oh, no, for sure. And honestly, I think I would rather do it like that. I mean, Alien is so powerful because you really only get a good look at the creature for like frames at the end, like full body shots or even closer ups of its face. It's before that last 20 minutes or so, it's in the shadows. You're seeing the tongue pop out, but really you're not seeing much besides that.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes that's where the real scare is that you're making it up in your head as to what it's going to look like and what
Totally.
is actually happening.
Just like walking around in the woods and being like, okay, I feel like there's something watching me. Like there's something here. I don't know what it is. Like that whole kind of dread we're wanting to build throughout the early part of the film. Awesome. But yeah, then once that movie's done, it's going to be we're going to take longer in the editing process since we don't have a deadline from a distributor. And then we're going to do the film festival thing again, like I was talking about before, maybe attacking some more higher profile fests than we did with INVOKING. And that's just because it's going to be a bigger movie. It's going to be our third movie, so it's going to be a better movie. Like, I mean, you only get better the more you do stuff. And we're actually going to have some more recognizable names attached to it, which nothing's signed on paper yet, so I can't get into it. But that's what attracts distributors is, oh, who's in it? So
yeah,
I think it'll be probably around, early 2014, maybe early 2015 or late this year. You'll see Valley of the Sasquatch in some film festivals. And then hopefully it gets a nice big release. And I'm trying to think as far as other stuff coming up. I mentioned it briefly when I was talking about the October people. We do have this movie Found, which is a great movie, which we were the sales reps for, and we've set them up with a distribution company who should be announcing it any moment, and it'll get a 2014 release, VOD, home video. It's going to get out there really wide, and that's a movie that we played with at a lot of film festivals, and we made friends with the filmmakers, and we're like, oh man, you guys made an amazing movie. The premise of Found is that it's a period piece. It's set in the early 90s, and it's about this 12-year-old kid who's a horror fan. Like, on weekends he runs to the video store and rents 3 horror movies and then watches them each day of the weekend, and he discovers that his older brother is a serial killer. And so it's this coming-of-age horror fan movie that's also a very extreme, very gory serial killer movie. And it's won a ton of awards. It's won more awards than the INVOKING played in festivals. Like, it's a great movie.
You're going to have to hook me up with a screener for that one.
Yes, and I definitely can. I would love to see the live tweet of that.
As always, no promises.
Oh, no, for sure.
Well, John, I'm actually going to wrap it up.
Okay.
Right here, but we're going to finish off. Is there anything else that you want to say or anybody that you want to give a shout out to?
I don't know. I guess I want to thank people who have supported the INVOKING. I mean, even if you ended up not liking it, it's just awesome that people are taking the chance on unknown horror movies. Like, this is kind of the only genre where it doesn't matter. You don't need to have a name. All you have to do is have an interesting premise that someone reads on the back of the box, or even a scary looking cover. And that can be enough to get somebody to plop down like their hard-earned money. Like, that's awesome. I'm so happy that people have been doing that. And it's been, I've seen how many people have rated it on IMDb, even if it's a bad rating. Like, that's a lot of people have seen that movie. That's amazing. And so I just want to thank people who have supported it. If you liked it, that's great. I definitely appreciate that too. And I guess just, the collaborators and things like that. There's so many good people that we work with. I can't really get into all of them, but the main October people, if you wanted to look us up on like social media, things like that, I'm October_John. And Jeremy, who is the director of the INVOKING, he also directed The Device, or he's going to. He's at October Jeremy. And then Matt, our producer, who also provided us the location and the story for INVOKING. He is at October Matt on Twitter. And then you can find the October People. It's October_People. We put stuff about all 4 of the movies we're currently developing or have come out. And then all future stuff you'll find on that feed. Some of the movies themselves also have feeds. The Device and Valley of the Sasquatch. You'll find like some Alien or some Bigfoot news, things like that on those feeds. Same thing with Facebook pages. Facebook.com/The October People, /Cedar Ridge, /The Device Film, /Valley of the Sasquatch, or /Found Movie. And you can just keep up with where the movies are playing, where you can get them at, new interviews, new reviews, all sorts of stuff. And just let us know what you think. We love to hear from you, unless you're sending us a message just saying, hey, fuck you guys.
Yeah, don't send those. Those aren't nice. So thank you, John. Thank you so much for joining us. It was really awesome to have you on tonight.
Thanks. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I'm excited to see the honeys at Crypticon again this year.
Yeah, I'm totally stoked to see you this year. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I'm trying to talk them into an alien abduction and a Bigfoot panel. We'll see how that goes.
Ooh, I think there might be an alien one. We have our fingers crossed for one of those.
Sweet.
All right, so you can find the October People online at theoctoberpeople.net, and they've got trailers and background on all of their films and all their upcoming films, as well as found on their website. So please check it out if you have a chance. So you can find our podcasts on Podomatic, Stitcher, and Radio Fubar right here on Radio Fubar. On Sunday nights, we are on live at 5 p.m. PST, 8 p.m. EST for those of you who don't like math. I want to thank our sponsors, Scandal Brewing and Bee Nectar Meadery. We love you guys. And I want to thank, once again, our producer, Honey Matt. Thank you so much for coming in and babysitting us and making sure that we can actually get live, because otherwise it just doesn't fucking happen. Linny, do you want to give them your Twitter details?
Yes, you can find me at Linny Loohoo, LINNIELOOWHO.
And you can find the Horror Honeys, of course, at thehorrorhoneys.com. And on Twitter, if you want to speak to me, you can speak to me at horrorhoneys, HORRORHONEYS. All right, guys, it's time to say goodbye. Everybody ready? 1, 2, 3, goodbye!
Bye.
Bye-bye! And play us out, Matt.
I have to take my baby to a movie show so I can try to suit you while the lights are low. But you won't cuddle to a story of romance. There's only one way I've got a chance. It takes the Batman, Wolfman, Frankenstein, or Dracula to put her in the mood for love. It takes the cat, girl, dog, boy, creature from the Black Lagoon.